All right. Good morning, councilors and interested parties. We're going to go on the record in the matter of the state of Georgia versus Khalif Adams et al. In 22 SC 183572. Let me go ahead and take roll for the morning. Mr. Stillwell and Mr. Sharp, Mr. Botts. Good morning, gentlemen. All right, Mr. Williams, Mr. Steele, Mr. Adams, and Mr. Renard. Good morning. All right, Mr. Kendrick and Mr. Weinstein. Good morning. All right, Mr. Huey and Mr. Matthews Sr., good morning. Good morning. All right, Mr. Nichols and Mr. Garner in that very attractive teal suit. Good morning. All right. And Mr. Ryan and Misty Williams, good morning. All right. Messrs. Brown and Smith. Mr. Atkins, Ms. Love, and Ms. Hilton, good morning. Good morning, Your Honor. All right, we also have some other folks here this morning. Again, madam, I apologize. I don't have everybody's names written down, and I know I should probably know your name at this point in time. Ms. Knight. Ms. Knight, good morning. Mr. Steele, who do you have with you this morning?
Your Honor, this is a second year, finishing a second year Georgia State.
Does she have a name? Okay, well, that's usually how we start off. Name would be great.
Your Honor.
Okay.
The young lady, young genius next to me is Haley H-A-L-E-Y, Paul H-A-L-T-I-W-A-N-G-E-R, Paul Wanger, and she is, I've been able to work with her for approximately a year and a half. We tried cases last year before this case, so 2 years, I guess 2.5. We tried cases together, and she is really a rising star in the profession. She's accepted the job starting next fall with the DeKalb County Public Defender's Office for an internship.
All right. Ms. Hartlinger, good morning and welcome. All right, and also this morning I have the privilege of hosting criminal justice cluster from Clark Atlanta University. Good morning, ladies. All right, they're here to observe as this is a public forum and all are welcome within this space. So, Sergeant Ingram, our jurors present?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Before I go out and bring out our jurors, have you all worked out the rest of your edits?
No.
What's left?
Your Honor, we have nothing from the state about the initial statement, which is July 15, 2015 by Mr. Murphy to Detective Gaither. It's my position. It doesn't come in. This is the issue we raised with the bench. Mr. Murphy said that he's in fear. He specifically said this has nothing to do with Jeffrey Williams.
Didn't we cover that already, though? Yeah, okay.
Excluded. Now I understand the state wants to play all three statements. In addition to that, they did not remove, to my knowledge, from the August 18, 2015 Jacoby Hudson statements. And I just don't know how else. I don't
Okay, well, let me find out first if they removed Mr. Hudson's statements. Okay, have you all removed Mr. Hudson's statements that we talked about?
Your Honor, I submitted a transcript yesterday that had pages 1 through 30 redacted like we discussed in court yesterday.
Okay, so has the corresponding video also been edited?
So because the video is choppy, what the state will do is, since we have to play through evidence reviewer, we're going to mute the portions that are redacted, because if you saw yesterday, the video was choppy, so we don't have a redacted video. But based on the timestamps, Your Honor, and I sent a cheat sheet of all the areas that we plan on muting so that everyone's aware of when we're going to start and stop the recording. Now, if Mr. Steele is talking about areas in which Mr. Hudson may have clarified, so for example, there's a portion of the interview in which I believe it's either Gaither or Dennis asks who all was in the car. And Mr. Hudson says, tell him who all was in the car. We did not redact this, Your Honor. It's stuff like that that is not redacted. But what we talked about from the first 13 minutes, that's gone, or the first 30 pages is gone. And then I believe that portion of time in which he's in the room by himself with his client, that portion is gone. But
What about the statements involving Mr. Williams at the house and the search warrant?
that's in a different video, Your Honor.
Has that been edited out as well?
That has.
Because I don't know how much we'll get this morning today, and we'll see where we get, we'll see where it goes.
Your Honor, that's from the July interview. And yesterday, we did not have the transcript. We got the transcript this morning, so I'm actually in the process of emailing that transcript over to everyone with the page reference of what we plan on redacting, which has to deal with the search at Mr. Williams' home. But that is the July interview, which we just got that transcript.
Okay, all right.
It's not that clean. We got the cheat sheet, and I'm not casting any blame here. We got the cheat sheet at 8:20 this morning. So, no, I'm not agreeing with it. And I
Okay, well, I'm just asking you because I'll make it for the record, and you can make an objection. And I'll go ahead and make rulings accordingly, should there be. But
And I'm not agreeing with, and I'm objecting to. I know you'll do whatever the honorable court thinks is within the law. But this muting in front of the jury, you're hiding information from a jury. These statements weren't ever.
they don't know what the purpose is, other than they're not playing it.
Understood.
So.
I don't want the videos played at all.
Okay, you've said that already.
They have a witness who can testify if it is a prior inconsistent statement. The state's putting in things that are not prior inconsistent statements.
Okay, we had an argument about this yesterday.
And you
So,
said just raise it, they have to be targeted. I'm just telling the court, we're going to be
But-
objecting.
but yes, but this particular, if you can impeach somebody through another witness who that is contrary to that particular witness. So I think if the state does that through this particular witness, they're entitled to do that.
I don't have a problem with proper impeachment through, in this case, Detective Gaither. My issue is the video is more than impeachment. That's what I'm saying. And I know the court said, hey, it has to be targeted. We're not just wholesaling, putting in these statements. The third statement is the one that is not in.
Third statement in terms of what? Which one?
I apologize.
Okay.
There's three statements recorded.
Yes.
The third one is February 16, 2016. It's a proffer with Attorney Chade Jimenez and Jacoby Hudson and Detective Gaither and Mr. Walter Murphy. And I may be leaving one person out, but I don't know if I am.
And is that the one that's been edited, Ms. Hilton?
Yes, Your Honor. So the proffer video is the one that we actually played through Mr. Murphy when he was on the stand. And there were portions that we had agreed on and we either muted it, but we actually went back and did an actual physical redaction and redacted out the parts that we either muted while in court. So the version that we gave to defense counsel, I believe Mr. Atkins emailed that at some point in time yesterday, was based upon what we actually did in court. And so that proffer video should be how it was presented to the jury in court. But that proffer video was already introduced. It's already evidence, Your Honor.
And I'm objecting to playing it again. That's what I'm saying. He agreed with everything. That's not an inconsistent.
Well, I think there's a disagreement about that, whether or not he agreed with everything. So that's where I'm gonna kind of see where it goes in that respect.
Video was played already. Why?
I know, but it can be utilized for different purposes. So I understand that, but like I said, I'll take it up depending upon what has been said.
So I am not agreeing to anything, obviously, but I'm doing what you said. We'll make objections as we go over.
Okay, all right.
And Your Honor, may we approach briefly?
Can I summon jurors, please?
No.
Your Honor, may I perfect the record just briefly? Just briefly.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Yesterday, in our discussion of the legality of this impeachment, we talked about impeachment by contradiction, and I just don't want the record to suggest that I'm acquiescing.
No, you have made this objection twice now, at least twice, as to a couple different witnesses. I understand where you had. I understand you made an objection as to it.
Yeah, I just don't think it's. I just want to be clear that I do not believe it's impeachment by contradiction either.
Okay. Well, all right, well, I understand that.
Okay,
That's
all right,
your
thank you.
position. Okay. All right, sir. All right. What is it you want to tell me at the bench? Come on up. Do we need a representative? Ladies and gentlemen, we are just going to continue to recess in place. The state's first witness is a few minutes out, so we'll go ahead and we'll just go ahead and recess and in place, and we'll wait on our witness, and then we call our jurors in. Okay? All right. All right. So we're in recess.
Hey, Doug, if you don't mind, we all talk.
I'm sorry.
But I was just suggesting that the better practice may be to do it before the jury is present.
Mr. Steele asked me that yesterday.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah, so I'm going to see if they qualify the witness using the Dahlberg standards in 702, and we'll let you all voir dire the witness accordingly, and then I will make a decision as to whether or not that particular individual is able to testify in that manner.
Thank you.
Okay?
Your
All
Honor,
right.
I just get a continuing objection.
Yes.
I don't believe the case, the 11th Circuit case, I think it's Ware.
You're right, it is Ware.
Thank you.
Okay, all right.
I don't believe it says that it's done in front of the jury. It said it wasn't done at all, and you have the discretion to find someone. But I don't.
No, it was done, there was no pre-admission. It was done in front of the jury because of the type of case it was. I mean, I think it was firearms or ballistics or whatever else, so.
I think the court just made that fine. Anyway, I'm objecting to it being done in front of the jury. I'm objecting not to have the Daubert heard outside the presence of the jury. Can I just have a continuing objection? Because I don't want to do this in front of the jury.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Anything else? All right, summon our witness, please. Yeah, I'll bring in the jury, yes, thank you. Do you want me to give a limiting instruction?
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. All right, thank you, Sergeant Ingram. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, good morning. Good morning. All right, without further delay, we're going to continue with the presentation of the state's case. Call your next witness.
The state calls Investigator Gaither to the stand.
All right, summon Investigator Gaither, please. All right, madam, good morning. If you would come on up, please. Witness stand, once you get there, if you turn and face Sergeant Ingram, be sworn as a witness before you sit down.
Raise your right hand. Swear affirm testimony you give today the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Spell the first and last name for the court.
Lakia Gaither, Lakeagaither.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, before we hear testimony from Detective Gaither, I'm going to read you an admonition, a limiting instruction, okay? So just bear with me, and then we'll go ahead and hear from our witness. You're about to hear testimony from Detective Gaither, who will testify both to facts and two types of opinions and the reasons for those opinions. I will describe all three types of testimony. The first is fact testimony. Fact testimony is based upon what the witness personally saw, heard, or did. The second is opinion testimony based on the specialized knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education of the witness. The third is called lay opinion testimony. As to the testimony about the facts, it's your job to decide which testimony to believe and which testimony not to believe. You may believe everything a witness says, or part of it, or none of it, or all of it. As to the opinion, testimony based on the witness's specialized knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education, you should judge this testimony like any other testimony. You may accept all of it, part of it, or none of it. You should give it as much weight as you think it deserves, considering the witness's knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education, the reasons for the opinion, and all other evidence in the case. As to lay opinion testimony, this testimony is based on inferences drawn from the witness's direct perceptions and must be rationally based on those perceptions and not on speculation or what someone else has said. You should judge this testimony like any other testimony. You may accept all of it, part of it, or none of it. You should give it as much weight as you think it deserves. When considering lay opinion testimony, however, you should not give it any extra credence based on the specialized knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education as witness. You should also consider whether the witness testified to personal observations or involvement of the fact. It's a fact witness testifying about a lay opinion based on the witness's perceptions or testifying to an opinion based on specialized knowledge, skilled, experience, training, or education. When a witness provides opinion testimony based on knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education, that person may rely upon facts that are not based on his or her personal observations or involvement, but that opinion cannot serve as proof of the underlying facts. The fact that a witness is allowed to express opinions based on a person's specialized knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education should not cause you to give that witness's undue influence for any aspect of that person's testimony or otherwise influence your assessment of the credibility of that witness. All right, madam, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. And just so clear, Your Honor, I will be attempting to qualify.
Objection.
I'm going to overrule it just for a second, just to see where she's headed. Okay, Mr. Steele? All right.
The order of the questioning will be first as an expert and then as.
So you're gonna qualify?
I'm going to.
Okay, all right,
Yes.
all right, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. And is it still Detective Gaither?
No. Good morning. No, good morning.
Thank you. Now, are you retired
Yes.
from police work?
Yes.
Would you tell the jury what kind of work you currently do?
Could you turn the microphone on, please?
Which one?
The one you're standing.
I'm afraid it's already on.
Yeah, if you could speak into it, Ms. Lowe. Thank you.
I don't think it's working, but I will speak up after it's.
I heard it. If you stand next to it, it'll pick up. Detective Gaither, if you could just also speak in the microphone.
Yes,
We're able to hear you. Okay, thank you.
Would Would you tell the jury what kind of, are you still in law enforcement?
No, ma'am.
And how long has it been since you left law enforcement?
4 years.
Did you retire from law enforcement?
Yes.
How long did you work in law enforcement?
Almost 19 years.
Would you please tell the jury where you're originally from?
Chicago, Illinois.
What part of Chicago, if any particular part?
Objection, relevance.
Your Honor,
Overruled.
go ahead.
South side of Chicago, Inglewood community.
And is Inglewood E-N-G-L-E?
E, yes.
W-O-O-D? And did you grow up in Inglewood, in the Inglewood community of Chicago?
Yes.
So did you go to grade school and high school there?
Yes.
What high school did you attend?
Bowen. B-O-W-E-N. Bowen.
And I'm standing over here, so
Yes.
the last year in there. Why?
Overruled. Just go ahead. Go ahead.
While you were growing up in Inglewood, were there any gangs in your neighborhood as you understood them to be?
Overruled, sir.
Yes.
And did you know about them while you were growing up?
Yes.
How did you know about them?
Just friends, going to school, gang members, the community. In Chicago, gangs, it's kind of like culture. So you're very aware of gangs at a young age.
Now, when you say it's kind of like culture, would you explain to the jury exactly what you mean?
Gangs in Chicago were very prevalent from my parents, my grandparents, all the way to me. So just gang lifestyles, what to stay away from, what to look for. It was very well known at a young age. So.
And who was it that gave you the information you had at that time
Objection.
about, and I'm not asking what they said,
I'll rule the objection, Mr. Foreman. Go ahead.
who was it that gave you the information that you used to just conduct yourself on a day-to-day basis as it relates to gangs?
Well, I'm the youngest in my family, so I have an older brother, uncles. We all live together, my mother. So just family, really. What to look for, who to stay away from.
And while you were growing up, what gangs did you know about that were there in Inglewood?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Overruled, sir.
In my neighborhood, it was Gangster Disciples and Black Disciples. Where I went to school, was, I believe it was Black Pea Stones in that area. So it's two different gang sets.
And I heard you say friends and family, I think.
Yes.
Did you know anyone who was actually associated with or a member of any particular street gang?
Yes.
What was your relationship to the people that you knew who were in street gangs?
I have family members, friends, high school friends.
And did you interact often on a daily basis with these people who were also gang members?
You can't choose your family, but, of course, family, but friends, you knew to be cordial with them at school. But, outside of that, my family did a pretty good job of keeping.
I'm gonna overrule the objection, Mr. Steele.
My family did a pretty good job of keeping myself and my siblings away from that.
Now, were you afraid to interact with them when you were growing up with your friends and family who were involved with gangs?
Objection, relevance.
I sustain the objection.
And did you have to comport yourself in any particular way as it related to gangs in your neighborhood growing up?
I would say so. I mean, we were taught at a very young age about certain colors you don't wear. Back then in the 80s and the 90s, the thing was, the way,
I'm gonna overrule the objection, sir.
the manner in which you wear your hat, whether it was to the either side or backwards, clothing attire, based on particular neighborhood that you lived in or frequent, that was a pretty well-known fact not to do or just be aware of.
Now, did you personally ever get involved with any gangs in the neighborhood?
No.
And did you actively avoid run-ins with gang members in the neighborhood that were not your family?
Objection, relevance.
I sustain the objection.
How large was the neighborhood that you grew up in?
We had to compare it. I mean, Inglewood community, several miles, maybe 9 square miles, if that.
Did I hear you say you have to compare it?
Yeah, if I were to try to compare it, I mean, to something here in Atlanta,
Cleveland Avenue area, Atlanta, are you familiar with that area?
yes,
How do you know about the Cleveland Avenue area of Atlanta?
just from working investigations and frequenting the area doing work.
Did I hear you say frequenting the area doing work?
During work,
Okay. And using the Cleveland Avenue area of Atlanta,
mhm.
can we use that? How would you describe Inglewood when compared to that area?
In comparisons as far as size or,
As far as size, culture,
I stand the question.
start with size.
Inglewood may be a little larger than Cleveland Avenue. I would say about, if you guys are familiar with Zone 3, Zone 3 is one of our larger zones. Inglewood will probably be the same size as Zone 3.
Thank you. And how about in terms of socioeconomic status? How would you describe the Inglewood area that you grew up in as compared to the Cleveland Avenue area?
Objection, relevance.
Overruled.
Uh,
Go ahead.
Go ahead and answer it. I'm gonna rule that objection as well.
It's roughly the same. I mean, you do have your crime, you do have financial issues between families, but there are good, hardworking people in the neighborhood as well. So roughly the same.
Now, when did you leave Chicago?
After high school,
And what year was that? No,
you're showing my age.
sorry.
98.
All right. And what was it that led you to leave Chicago?
I thought I wanted to go to college, so I went
So where did you go to school?
in West Virginia,
What school in West Virginia?
West Virginia State College.
Now, you said you thought you wanted to go there. Did you know growing up that you wanted to go to college?
No,
Overruled.
no.
At West Virginia State College, did you declare a major?
Objection, relevance.
What was your
Overruled.
major?
Criminal justice.
Did that major have anything to do with the neighborhood that you grew up in or your contact?
Relevance.
Why did you choose criminal justice?
I'll sustain the question as to form. I'm gonna overrule the objection, Mr. Sharp.
Why did you choose criminal justice?
I have no clue. I mean, I never wanted to be law enforcement. I grew up watching the TV shows, Law and Order, Cops. I thought it was interesting, but I didn't have a desire to be a police officer.
Now, did you graduate?
I did not.
All right. Why did you leave before graduating?
Financial reasons, in school and at home.
Where did you go when you left West Virginia State?
Atlanta.
And what year was that?
2000, late 2000.
How old? Never mind, I'm not going to even
I'm
ask.
done.
When you got to Atlanta, what did you do in terms of employment?
I think I worked a retail job for a short period of time.
Did you do something different after that?
APD, Atlanta PD.
All right. What made you apply with the Atlanta Police Department? What made you choose that particular agency?
Honestly, I was just giving a friend of mine a ride down to Atlanta Police Headquarters to apply. And he suggested that I come in and apply as well. So there was no intention of doing it.
All right. Now, once you applied, did you have any idea what role you wanted to play in the police department?
No.
And when you first came to Atlanta, culturally, was it the same, different than, or in some ways both, to where you grew up in Inglewood?
Foundation, Your Honor. Relevance.
I'll sustain the objection.
Is it as to foundation, or do I need to?
I'll sustain as to relevance. You didn't
Okay.
lay more foundation.
Thank you. When you first came to Atlanta, did you personally, at that time, know about any gangs in the city of Atlanta?
No,
And did you personally, at that time, recognize any signs of criminal street gang activity in the city of Atlanta?
no.
What was your first role at the Atlanta Police Department?
I was a patrol officer in Zone 4, Southwest Atlanta.
What parts of Atlanta made up Zone 4 at that time?
West End area, Cascade, the northern part of Martin Luther King, excuse me, the western part of Martin Luther King, Fairburn Road, parts of Camp Creek, Campbellton Road.
Now, as it relates to Zone 3, where was Zone 4 situated in Atlanta? Were they next to one another, separated by another zone, or something different?
Parts of Zone 3 do border Zone 4. If you're down on the eastern end of Zone 4, like around Lee Street, West End Mall area, that borders the western part of Zone 3, Mechanicsville, Pittsburgh neighborhood, Deal Avenue. And outside of that, everything else is kind of on the opposite side. Zone 6 is the other side of Zone 3.
Okay. And so, was it your testimony that the Mechanicsville, Pittsburgh, and Deal Avenue area of zone?
Repeating testimony.
I'm trying to get clarity.
I'll
Clarity for the question.
overrule the objection, sir.
Were those areas, the Mechanicsville area, Pittsburgh area, and Deal Avenue area in Zone 3?
Yes.
And did they abut Zone 4?
Lee Street was basically the border between Zone 3 and Zone 4. So Lee and Abernathy was kind of the barrier between the two zones,
Okay.
if you had to break them up.
Did you interact with people from Zone 3 as well as Zone 4, or did you only interact with people who lived in Zone 4 at the time that you first started as a patrol officer in Zone 4?
You mean citizens or police?
Citizens? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's no barriers for citizens in Atlanta. They come to Zone 3. Our Zone 4 citizens go to Zone 4. It's not like police work where you're kind of restricted to a certain area. Citizens, they move back and forth, come in contact with all types of people.
Would you tell the jury what your responsibilities were as a patrol officer in Zone 4?
I was assigned to Evening Watch, which is 2:30 to 10:30, I believe. Responsibilities included answering 911 calls, traffic accidents, directed patrols, that type of thing.
Describe for the jury a typical day at Evening Watch for you in Zone 4 as a patrol officer.
So this is a typical day.
Your Honor, I'm establishing.
I'll just sustain this form. You can rephrase.
Was there any one particular duty that you performed more often than any others as a patrol officer in Zone 4 on Evening Watch?
Well, Evening Watch was the busiest time of day for police officers. So by the time I got to work, we would have a bunch of calls independence, calls holding for officers to respond to. So the first several hours of my day would be trying to knock down our pending of all the calls that came in previous before I came to work. So
Say that last part again, I didn't hear you. The first part of your day was what?
was trying to help with the pending calls that were calls for service that were just sitting in the queue waiting on the officers to respond to. So the first half of my day was that, just trying to get the pending down. We would come in and it would be 30 calls in the pending back then. So and the second part would trying to play catch up until you learn how to work your day.
All right. Now, as a patrol officer, did you actually investigate cases that occurred in Zone 4, or did you only respond to the cases?
No, my responsibility was a first responder, which is when someone calls 911, the first officer that responds to your house or whatever scene that the call was. I would take the initial report, and if it needed to be forwarded to a detective or an investigative unit, it would then be forwarded to that unit.
And what was the difference in what you did as a patrol officer and what the investigator would do with that same fact circumstance that you handed over?
Really, I was just the initial responding officer to gather whatever preliminary facts about whatever case or incident it was and document that. And that would then be forwarded to the investigator to further look into it, investigate the crime.
As a first responder on evening watch in Zone 4, how often did you have personal contact with the citizens of Zone 4?
All day, every day, all the time.
And was that contact only when you were arresting someone?
No,
Was it only when you were investigating a crime though?
no.
What opportunities did you have to interact with the citizens of Zone 4 outside of arresting somebody or investigating a crime?
I kind of learned how to work my day. I wasn't a fan of answering 911 calls, accidents. So I just kind of became proactive where I would get out in our high crime areas, places where we knew people would loiter. I would just get out, talk to people, and, if I was able to make an arrest, I would. If not, just getting to know who was on my beat and the beat surrounding my beat was really my day. And by doing that, that kind of took me away from having to answer 911 calls.
Now,
Sorry, Ms. Love, 1 second. Is your microphone on?
this one,
Yes.
it's on, but I think that the battery is dead. I turned it on, it's on, there's nothing,
What
coming
kind of,
from no light.
what kind of battery is that?
Does the court prefer that I wait or?
Or just go to that central mic so we can all hear you, because that's a problem, so.
Okay. Am I heard if I speak right here?
Not as well as you probably would on the central mic. Hold on, we're gonna see if it's working.
I'll just carry on right here while he's getting that. Thank you. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, you said that you spent a lot of time getting to know your beat. Was it your goal when you were getting to know your beat to go out and make your priority when you went out to know your beat?
Really, the priority was to stay away from 911 calls. I mean, just if we're being honest. So if that included, just doing directed patrols, doing drop-ins, which is my business on my beat. I would go into the stores, talk to the store owners. The old guys sitting on the side of the building drinking, they give you a lot of information. So my priority wasn't to lock people up. I wasn't trying to be on I-20 doing accident reports.
All right. How long did you stay in patrol at Zone 4?
A little over a year.
Is that the normal time that a new officer stays at that level?
No,
What's usually the time? Is it more or less?
probably more.
All right. So did you get out generally earlier than normal?
I did.
All right. Now, what happened that caused you to leave patrol in Zone 4 earlier than normal?
I guess my supervisors figured me out and they put me on the FIT team, which is the field investigative team. It's plain clothes, you do proactive work. So,
When you say figured you out, what do you mean?
they saw I wasn't answering 911 calls, so it used me in a better capacity.
When you say proactive work, please explain what you're talking about to the jury. What do you mean?
For me, just getting out your car, walking around, talking to groups of guys. Again, if it led to an arrest, it was an arrest. If it was a traffic stop that led to an arrest or seizure of guns, drugs, that's just what it was. It's just being just proactive, just getting out your car.
And did you want to get to know your community as well?
I did.
Did you live in that area while you worked in that area?
No, I actually lived in Zone 3 at the time.
Okay. What area of Zone 3 did you live in, generally speaking?
Carver Homes.
Does Carver Homes still exist?
It does.
Would you tell the jury what the Georgia Peace Officer Standards and Training Council, or POST, is?
That's the council that certifies people to be police officers in the state of Georgia.
And were you POST certified while you worked at APD?
Yes.
Are there different POST certifications or just one?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Did you have to do anything to remain POST certified while you were at APD?
Every year we would have in-service, which is your yearly certification that the police department gives you to keep your post certification. You'll be firearms qualifications, updates on Georgia law, stuff like that.
And did you remain POST certified while you were at the Atlanta Police Department?
Yes.
Was maintaining POST certification a requirement of your employment at the Atlanta Police Department?
Yes.
When you said you were assigned to the field investigations team, when exactly did you start in that group?
Roughly late 2004, I believe.
All right. And what personally, beyond what you've already explained, did you do within the field investigations team?
As far as day-to-day activities?
Yes.
Day-to-day activities would include, again, being proactive, doing drop-ins at our local businesses. We would respond to areas that were considered hot spots within the zones. That information would come through crime analysis and our supervisors. We would do low-level narcotics buys. Yeah, that's really it. Whatever was going on, or not whatever was going on, whatever area within the zone was considered a hot spot that week, that's the area that we would concentrate on, whether it was for robberies, drug sales, shootings. Yeah, that's just the area that we would focus on.
And you said hotspot. Is there another phrase or a term for hotspot? What does a hotspot mean?
Like a high crime area.
Okay. And you said that that information came from crime analysts and supervisors?
Yes.
Is that information that the general public would have access to?
They looked hard enough, they could probably find it, but generally it was within APD.
All right. Did you only work within Zone 4 with the FIT team, or did you work all over the city of Atlanta?
We would cross borders sometimes, but for the most part, I maintained in Zone 4.
And is that where you were assigned during your entire tenure with the FIT team?
Yes.
Now, is the FIT team the same thing as the Red Dog unit at APD, or is that something totally different?
Absolutely not. It's completely different.
Oh, okay. Did they have anything to do with one another?
No.
All right. And how long did you say you worked at FIT, in the FIT unit?
About 3 years, 3.5 years.
Were you always in plain clothes, or did you sometimes wear a uniform while you were working in that unit?
At that time, the only time I put on a uniform was to go to my extra job. Other than that, I was in jeans and a t-shirt.
Did having a uniform versus not having a uniform make your interactions with the citizens any easier or any harder as you observed it?
Objection, relevance.
I'll overrule the objection, sir.
My experience, I felt like the uniform kind of was a distraction. A lot of people would just look at the uniform, like they wouldn't look at the person.
I'll overrule the objection, sir.
They would look at the uniform and not the person or what you were saying. So it became a lot easier for me just to even maneuver to get to talk to certain people in plain clothes, jeans and a t-shirt. It was a lot easier than the uniform and a patrol car.
And as a FIT officer, did you investigate crimes or did you respond to crimes? Or did you do some hybrid, both?
We did both. The high priority calls like the shootings or robberies, we will respond to, but we did conduct a lot of our own investigations.
And during your time in the FIT team, to your knowledge at that time, did your investigations ever involve gang activity that you knew of at that time?
Not from what my idea from where I grew up was actual gangs. So during that time, 2004 to 7, 8, no, I didn't. That wasn't my focus. I wasn't necessarily paying attention to it. So I didn't, obviously because I didn't recognize anything that I was familiar with as far as gangs in Atlanta, so.
And again, what is it that you were familiar with or that you were looking for or would have expected to see as it relates to gangs, to tell you that there's gangs here in Atlanta at that time?
Probably the graffiti, the manner in which, you know, people wore their clothes or their hats, the hand signs. That just wasn't, you know, I wasn't focused on that because I didn't see those familiar signs here in Atlanta that I knew of.
Doing the math, if you stayed with FIT about 3.5, 4 years, did you leave in 2007?
Yes.
All right. And what happened? Why did you leave the FIT team?
I was asked to go to the gang unit.
What year did you start in the gang unit at the Atlanta Police Department?
2007.
When you first joined the gang unit, what was your position there?
Well, I was an officer.
Were there both officers and investigators in the gang unit?
I believe it was myself and one other officer, and the rest were detectives.
Would you tell the jury at that time what difference there was between an officer and an investigator in the gang unit? Was it the same as?
Money?
Oh, okay. All right. So even as an officer in the gang unit, unlike as a patrol officer, in the gang unit, would you actually begin to investigate your own cases?
Not initially. I mean, I didn't really know what I was doing. It was just, you go to the gang unit, you have more freedom and access to move around the city, learn different parts of the city. So, you know, I didn't know much about gang investigations. I knew how to investigate a little bit just based on my time on the Zone 4 FIT team. So I just kind of reverted back to what I knew, which was being proactive and not necessarily working gang investigations because I wasn't aware of how to do it.
And you took me to the very next question. At that time, by the time you had reached the gang unit, when you first joined, had you had any formal training in criminal street gangs?
No.
Had you had any formal training in identifying or investigating criminal street gangs before joining the gang unit?
No, I didn't.
Do you know why you were assigned to the gang unit when you had no formal training in either gangs or criminal street gang activity?
Objection, false speculation.
I sustain the objection.
While in the gang unit, did you obtain any formal training on criminal street gangs in Atlanta?
Yes.
Now, when you joined the gang unit, did Georgia have a formal definition for a criminal street gang?
Your Honor, that was called for law, I will object.
I sustain the objection.
Did you, at the time you joined the gang unit in Atlanta, were you aware of any formal definition of a criminal street gang utilized by the Atlanta Police Department?
No, I didn't know gangs existed in Georgia.
At this time, or at the time that you left the Atlanta Police Department, did the Atlanta Police Department use Georgia law's formal definition of a criminal street gang in making charging decisions in criminal cases?
You said the time that I left?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. And again, when you first joined the gang unit, did you know of any formal definition of criminal street gang activity?
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained.
Is there a distinction between criminal street gangs and criminal street gang activity?
Law, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I have to ask to test her knowledge as it relates to what she did.
It's not accurate, it's law.
I sustain the objection. I sustain the objection, madam. She may be able to, I don't think it's
I'll
quite.
rephrase.
All right.
During your time in the gang unit, as you progressed, did you recognize in your work, did you employ a distinction between criminal street gangs and criminal street gang activity?
Yes.
I'm going to overrule the objection, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about what training, if any, that you got while you were at the gang unit. First, let me start off. How long were you an officer in the gang unit?
I went to the gang unit in 2007. I was promoted to detective in, shoot, don't give me the line. Maybe 2012, maybe 13. I'm not exactly sure the dates, but from 07 to, I was promoted to sergeant in 2016. That entire time I was in a gang unit as an officer and a detective, so from 2007 to 2016.
While at the gang unit, what were your sources of information for gangs and gang activity if you had no formal training before getting there?
Once I got the training, I mean, I got to know a lot of people within the community, good and bad. And a lot of my gang knowledge and information really came from them. We did have meetings with other jurisdictions and information sharing within our department and our unit. But if we're just speaking about Georgia gangs, the gangs within Atlanta,
Yes.
a wealth of my information just came from the community and gang members themselves.
So let's break that down just a little bit. When you say, what do you mean when you use those terms in this context?
Just normal citizens, people that don't commit crimes, and then when you commit a crime, just interviews with suspects, people who are arrested. You do get a lot of information from that as well.
At the time, at the time that you joined the gang unit, what were the focuses? What did the gang unit mainly do within the city of Atlanta?
I would say relevant, Your Honor, this is what I'm talking about, James relevant.
Your Honor, it's relevant.
Bless you.
It's relevant, establishing background. The juror has to gauge.
I'll sustain the objection, sir.
You sustain it, Your
No,
Honor?
I'm going to overrule the objection.
Thank you.
All right.
At the time that you joined the gang unit, what was the primary focus of the gang unit? What type of investigations?
I don't know what they was doing, honestly. I know we had a couple of people that did homeland security investigations involving threats against officers or organized crime. It wasn't street gang investigations, to my knowledge. It was, they were doing some other stuff.
And what type of formal training did you get while you were in the gang unit, if any at all, on criminal street gangs and recognizing and identifying criminal street gang activity?
My first couple of years within the gang unit, I did a little bit of training, just gang identification. It was roughly 40 hours or so within my first couple of years. And after that, I was just sadly too busy within investigations to kind of do much formal training.
Let's talk about that 40 hours that you did get. What type of information did you learn during that 40 hours of gang training that you did get, formal 40 hours?
Just the basic gang identifiers, how to recognize a gang, crimes that gangs generally committed. I'm not going to say that it was worth anything, but a lot of the instructors were not from Atlanta or worked the Atlanta area, so a lot of the information was really general, loosely based on national criminal street gangs, the traditional gangs.
Were you educated about the laws of the state of Georgia in that training? And
Yes.
were you educated about how to apply the laws?
I stand as to form. You can rephrase, madam.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Did you learn about the laws of Georgia as they related to criminal street gangs?
Yes.
I stand the objection as to form.
Yes, Your Honor. What kind of information did you learn as far as laws were concerned during your training with the gang unit, your formal training?
The Georgia laws regarding criminal street gangs.
Did you learn anything at all about applying those laws?
We did. We learned basically what the state considered to be a gang and what particular crimes or activities were considered criminal street gang activity. That it was a difference between the actual two. It's two separate meanings.
And did you use that lesson, those lessons that you received during your formal training, on a consistent basis while performing your duties within the gang unit?
Yes.
I will rule the objection.
Yes.
Did the gang unit that you described when you first went there doing different things, did it continue operating in that manner, or at some point did it shift its focus?
Definitely think it shifted its focus roughly 2010 or so.
What types of things led you to recognize a shift in the focus of the gang unit?
During our daily activities or investigations of various crimes that were not initially considered, gang related, we began to see identifiers of gangs now operating in the city of Atlanta. We would see graffiti. At that time, social media became more.
Sir, you have an objection, sir? Basic.
History is irrelevant. History is irrelevant. The witness understands.
Her background is what?
It's relevant, sir. I'm going to overrule your objection, okay? You may have a continuing objection, sir.
Please continue.
Social media started to become a thing. It was new. It was new to us. So We did rely on a lot of social media information to the intelligence gathering. Our local gang members at the time would bolster their gang affiliations on social media, which kind of, was surprising to us because we really hadn't seen that before in that manner. So around that time is when we kind of start putting the pieces together with people that we had already previously identified for particular crimes throughout the city. They were now identifying themselves as part of whatever particular gang.
When you said that you began to,
Testimony, Your Honor.
Let me hear the question first.
when you said that you began to recognize identifiers, what was it that allowed you and the other members of the gang unit that you worked with to recognize things that you had not recognized before?
I'm gonna allow it, Mr. Steele.
You may answer.
Well, definitely the training that we had received and the understanding of, well, my understanding of the law. We would see kids wearing T-shirts and hats and stuff with acronyms and words under it, and the involvement that we had within the community to just get out and talk to people or ask, what does that mean? They were pretty proud about, telling us what it was and what it meant.
We're not asking you soliciting.
Yeah, I'm gonna overrule the objection. Overruled. Overruled. Did you get those people, Christina? Okay, all right.
You may continue. So you said that they would talk to you.
Overruled, sir.
Please continue with what you were saying.
I don't even know what I was saying. I'm sorry.
You said that the people, did you say
Overruled, sir.
that the people that you interacted with would talk to you? You were saying
Correct.
how you were describing your interaction.
Correct. Yeah, just getting out talking to folks, not just people you're arresting, but just normal citizens within the communities, grandmas and uncles who.
That I'll sustain.
In terms of beginning to recognize signs of criminal street gang activity, what else, if anything, allowed you to recognize things and signs that you had not recognized before, besides training, formal training?
Yeah, definitely the different clothing that we would see. Certain people start to wear the social media with the post, and you can add a caption to it. A lot of that during that time was, this is my gang, and hand signals that we weren't accustomed to seeing. Graffiti throughout the neighborhoods. At the time, 2011, 10, 11, 12, we had a lot of school fights that really weren't a thing before. Because during our daily duties, we would respond to a lot of the schools to try to do preventative gang work. So we did see an uptick in, I don't want to say gang fights, but two groups of kids fighting. We would see that.
And when you were involved in working the gang, did you consider it a crime to just simply be in a group wearing the same shirts as you described earlier?
Objection to the witness considering a crime.
Your Honor, if
What's the basis for your objection, sir?
The law is going to go beyond what a witness can testify about. Jury's made a decision.
Okay, I got you.
Your Honor,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
it goes to her qualifications and knowledge in this area.
I'll rule the objection. You may answer the question, Madam.
I'm sorry, what was the question again? I apologize.
And when you were involved in working with the gang, did you consider it a crime to just simply be in a group wearing the same shirts as you described earlier?
No.
Did you did you arrest people for making hand signs?
No,
Did you arrest people for using certain hashtags?
Can I have a continuing objection?
Yes, you may, sir.
Did you arrest some unknown person for doing something, some unknown sign?
Your Honor,
I object.
She's got to lay a foundation, so you can object, I'll go ahead and make a continuing objection, okay?
And there's no foundation for an arrest. Nothing to do with
Overrule,
qualification.
overrule, sir.
Your Honor, I'm going to object on grounds of relevance.
Overrule, sir.
Thank you.
when you were describing what you saw and recognized as signs of gangs appearing, what other signs did you see besides the ones that you just described to the jury?
I mean, off the top of my head, I think those were the main ones. I may be missing a couple, but I think those are the main ones.
Did you ever hear any language that was used by groups of people consistently that was sort of different from the average?
Objection, Your Honor, leading.
And hearsay.
I'll sustain as to leading. The other two I'll overrule. So you can rephrase, please.
Thank you, Judge. Were there any linguistic styles that you noticed as signs of gang presence?
Yes.
Describe what you mean when you say yes.
We, at the time, again, social media was a very informative tool that we used. You would see gang language from Bloods to Crips, the usage for Bloods not using the letter C. So they would cross out certain letters that were synonymous to rival gangs, like the Crips, and replace it with a B or an X. We would see Crips doing the same thing. They wouldn't use the letter B in language that, in hashtags, captions, even on graffiti. We would see graffiti being crossed out if in certain neighborhoods that we knew a particular gang operated in, we would see the next day they have an X through it. So yeah, it was definitely in the language that they used, slang.
Did you see any correlation between those signs that you saw and any particular criminal activity in areas of Atlanta?
Are you asking what particular areas did we see it in?
Yes.
Well, when I went to gangs, we were citywide, so that was my first time really able to cross the borders of Zone 4. Zone 4 definitely had a lot of blood gangs within it. We did have some gangster disciples around Fairburn Road area. Zone 3 was predominantly Bloods, but we did still have a lot of hybrid neighborhood gangs that weren't really identifying with traditional national gangs.
Did agencies or units within the Atlanta Police Department share information as it related to gang intelligence?
Yes.
Would you explain how that occurred?
Yeah, so we would have monthly meetings with surrounding jurisdictions that included DeKalb County, Clayton County, Fulton County, and it was really just information sharing. At the time, criminals didn't necessarily have a border in which they stayed in. If you're a criminal, they operated everywhere. So we definitely had to come together and collaborate with information gathering to try to put a hold on crime.
And what kind of information did you all share within these monthly meetings with other law enforcement agencies?
Gang trends, crimes, really gangs and crime trends.
What sort of crime trends did you, within the gang unit, begin to, if any at all, did you begin to recognize during the time that you actually started to see signs of gang presence in Atlanta?
Definitely the smash and grabs. That was the first real trend that I saw. We had guys that operated within Atlanta that would drive cars through buildings and steal blue jeans, steal flat screens. That went on for several years. I mean, at least 4 years of the smash and grab robberies and burglaries were the thing here in Atlanta.
And how, if at all, did you correlate that with the rise in gang presence? How did you all within the unit make any kind of connection between the two?
Well, once we arrested a few people and we previously identified them as being associated with neighborhood cliques or hybrid gangs, that kind of made the connection of almost like a spider web of once you kind of find one or two, you definitely find the other 6 or 7 guys. So just previous run-ins with gang members, whether it's during an arrest or just general contact, citizen contact.
Would the general public have access to the information you shared with other law enforcement agencies in these gang intelligence meetings that you held monthly?
No.
Did you have access to any other sources of gang intelligence during your time with the gang unit besides information sharing sessions?
I can't think of any right now.
When you made arrests in certain crimes, did you all collect evidence that contained anything that informed you about gangs? Like,
Yeah.
and what type of evidence?
We would later on, we started finding a lot of gang Bibles, which are basically their bylaws that the gangs operate off of. We would find, again, like I stated, the T-shirts and the hats with gang insignias and markings on them. I think that's about it that I can think of right now.
Were cell phones being used in the
Oh,
time?
absolutely.
I'll
Cell
stand
phones.
as to form. You can rephrase.
Yes, Your Honor. Did you ever collect anybody's cell phone?
Yeah, cell phones were very informative and key pieces of evidence when gaining gang activity or signs of gang activity.
Why?
Well, the camera phones and were being used to memorialize gang activity. If a person was arrested and there was probable cause to search their cell phones, we would apply for search warrants, get that information back from cell phone companies, and do a search of the actual phone, and we would find a lot of evidence regarding gang activity.
Did you ever get search warrants for other things like social media?
Yes.
What was the purpose for getting a search warrant for a social media site?
Foundation for the question.
I stand the question. You lay a little more foundation.
Why were y'all interested in people's social media sites?
Just based on the information that the user would put out. If our focus was gang, oh, did somebody say something? Oh, if our focus was gang activity, our local gang members were making it known to put it on social media so it could be displayed to the public. So it was definitely a key piece of evidence that we wanted. There would also be direct messages, which is like a DM feature within social media where you can communicate with anyone who was on your page, whether they were local or from around the world. And that information was very key in gathering information about national street gangs and the traditional gangs that were not operating in Georgia at the time. We did get a lot of information from the direct messages and text messages within cell phones.
Was the information you were able to get when you got a search warrant any different than that anybody could look at on a public site?
No, direct messages are private. It's just between the two users. Unless the person, displays the message, it's just between those two users.
So did the general public have access to that information you were able to obtain about gangs through social media search warrants and the like?
No.
I stand the objection. Ms. Love, I
Yes,
think we're in need of a break at this point in time, as I understand it. I have it on good authority.
Yes, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and take a Recess until 11 o'clock, we'll come back, okay? All right. All rise. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be in recess until 11, okay? Okay? All right.
All right, for sure.
Thank you, Sergeant ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
Oh, okay, I see.
All right, you may continue.
Thank you, Judge. And I keep wanting to call you Detective Gaither. What do I need to call you?
Just call me Gaither. Look here,
Okay,
either or,
not Ms. Gaither, Ms. Gaither.
whatever you feel.
We were talking about when we left for lunch, the information.
Don't lunch yet, don't.
I'm sorry.
Heat up now.
Freudian slip, my apologies, Freudian slip. We were talking before we left for break about social media information gathered through search warrants. How many social media accounts would you say you've had access to over the years during your time with the gang unit?
You mean looking at others or my own?
No, where you got a search warrant to look at social media accounts to help you learn more about anyone's participation in particular activity.
We started with the social media roughly 2011 or so. We really started getting in depth with it. So from 2011 to really when I retired in 2020, probably hundreds, honestly. It's a lot.
And was it from only one site, or did that
No.
information you had access to vary?
Oh yeah, it varied different sites. We've received information from Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, was it Bumble or Bimble? Not familiar with the TikToks. That's new to me, but you know, back then the MySpace and the Facebooks and Twitter were the popular ones.
All right. And how many cell phone extractions or data dumps have you had access to since you worked as a detective and an officer in the gang unit?
That got to be several hundreds over my time.
Were those cell phone data extractions information that the general public had access to?
No,
Did they give you useful information in investigating gang activity here in Atlanta?
absolutely.
When people were arrested or detained for crimes in Atlanta, where is it that they're taken? For felonies, generally?
Generally, Fulton County Jail.
And are you able to, during your time at the Atlanta Police Department, were you able to have access to calls that were made from the Fulton County Jail?
Yes.
How were you able to get that access?
We would have to receive, obviously, permission from, I believe, the sheriff, whatever sheriff that is, or administrator of the jail. Once granted permission, we would have access to, what was it? Maybe Securus. I believe Securus was the name of the system that the jail used to allow inmates to make phone calls, and we had access to that system.
Did you have to log into the system with your own personal password given to you by the administrator?
Yes.
Did the general public have access to that information that you gave?
No.
And what kind of information, if any at all, did you get from jail calls while working in the gang unit?
Jail calls were very important as well, especially the ones that were made really early on when a person was arrested. They
Your Honor.
Cases.
No foundation, I don't have any of these jail calls talking about.
Overruled, sir.
the calls that were made from intake, they're labeled as intake, and those are
Objection, Your Honor. In individual case, I object.
I'll overrule your objection, sir.
You can
Can I continue your objection?
You may, sir.
the intake calls for us were the most raw and important ones, because that's when a person's, first getting to the jail, they're calling whatever loved one or person they want to talk to. And generally you get the most information from that.
Cases, sir.
It's hearsay.
She hasn't given any
Yeah, I'm
statement.
going to overrule the objection, sir.
Okay. All right. And what, if anything, did you do with the information you gathered from jail calls, social media, cell phone extractions, as it related to your role with the gang unit?
Objection, compound question.
I'll stand as to form. You can rephrase, madam.
What did you do with the information you gained from jail calls as they related to your role with the Atlanta Police Department and the gang unit?
We would definitely save them, download them to our computer, and add them to the investigative files.
Now, when you say add them to the investigative file, would that be the file on particular people or just the general file?
Well, if the person was in jail, it was obviously for a crime. So generally we would, during our investigations, we would make a file folder, and we would download whatever jail calls or social media, cell phone extractions, and put it either on a disk or a jump drive and add it to whatever investigative file as to memorialize information and keep it.
How many jail calls would you say you listened to, did you listen to while you were at the Atlanta Police Department and the gang unit?
I don't know, it's a lot, a lot.
Is it over 100?
Well over 100,
All right. Does it exceed 1,000?
probably close to. It's a lot. I couldn't give you an exact number, but that was a very important tool that we used.
And you said that you put it in the file. What would you do with the file once you completed your investigation?
We would put it in the file cabinet.
Did you give it over to the DA's office after an arrest was made?
Oh, I'll sustain the objection. You can rephrase.
Did you just leave it in the file cabinet?
No, if the case went further or, the DA's office wanted it, we would forward it to them or make a copy for them. It wasn't a secret file that we only kept if, the DA needed a lawyers, we would definitely give it to them.
Besides the difference in pay, what other differences existed between your role that you served as an officer in the gang unit and your role that you served as an investigator in the gang unit?
There's no difference.
So what was it that got you promoted? Got anybody promoted?
Take the test and you pass, you're promoted.
Did experience have anything to do with it? Like your time in the gang unit?
Well, you couldn't apply to be a detective. I believe you had to be on for, at the time, maybe 5 years, like 4 or 5 years. You had to be employed for the department before taking the test.
So as an officer with the gang unit, would you do any more or the same type work that you did as an officer, say, in patrol or with the FIT team, as far as investigations were concerned?
It was more closer to the 15 work, patrol. I just erased that part of my life. I just wasn't doing that. But it was closer to 15 work rather than patrol.
Were there any particular parts of Atlanta that you had more interaction with as related to the other parts of Atlanta during your time with the gang unit? Did you focus or concentrate on any area at all?
One of the most crimes were Zone 3, 1, and 4. So we did a lot of work in probably Zone 3 was the most. It was really all over the city, but Zone 3 and Zone 1 and 4 were the hot zones for crime.
Did the information that you were able to gather during your time as a patrol officer and as a FIT officer serve you in any way while you were at the gang unit?
Absolutely.
In what ways?
Just prior relationships that I built, talking to members of the community, people I arrested in the past. Just those relationships definitely help with information gathering.
Were you in plain clothes all the time during your gang unit tenure? Did you wear a uniform sometimes?
No, we very rarely wore uniform. Maybe 2 or 3 times within a couple of weeks throughout my entire time there that we actually had to wear uniform. Probably for a detail, but we were primarily plain clothes.
When you met with people in the community, did you make it known that you were a gang unit officer or detective during your time in the gang unit?
No, I think the ones that knew me, but I didn't display it like I'm a gang detective. They just knew me as G.
They call you what?
G.
G?
Repeating
How-
the answer,
Hold on.
ask and answer.
I'm overruled the objection, sir.
How much contact, how many self-identified gang members did you have contact with during your time in the gang unit? Just outside of arrests, just normal?
There would be confrontation clause and yours.
I'm not asking her what anybody said.
Yeah, I'll overrule the objection, sir.
And Your Honor, as far as a foundation for what we're doing,
Yes.
We're not doing anything.
Mr. Steele, please don't speak. Okay, don't speak your objection. Give me a basis and then I'll rule on it, okay?
Ask for hearsay, say specifically when did the person tell you.
I'm, okay, as part of foundation, I'm gonna overrule your objection, sir.
so how much contact did you have with people who identified as a gang member?
Throughout my tenure in gangs, hundreds, not against the law.
What did you just say?
It's not against the law to be in a gang, so if that's what you're asking.
And how readily did self-identifying gang members interact with you after you got in the gang unit as opposed to while you were in fit or on patrol?
Fit, I can't say I did much gang investigations, but once I was in gangs, it was often, just general conversation.
Did you ever gain information from self-identifying gang members about the gang that they identified with?
Yes.
How often were you privy to that kind of information?
I think once I became more seasoned as a detective and even an officer, when we would conduct interviews, whether it was gang members as victims or witnesses, I kind of made it a point to ask them questions regarding the gang because that was now my focus, being in the gang unit. So it wasn't just about whatever incident or crime we were investigating at the time. If I knew them to be a gang member or an associate, I would definitely ask questions regarding the gang.
Is the information you gained during those interactions information that the general public had access to?
No.
While working with the gang unit, did you employ any standard protocol for identifying associates or members of gangs in Atlanta?
Yeah, we would kind of follow what the state of Georgia recognized as what a criminal street gang was.
And when you were looking at groups of people determining gang affiliation, was there any certain number that were affiliated with the group that you had to, for your purposes, meet before you identified the group as a gang?
The law, Your Honor.
I'm speaking about the methods that she used.
I will the objection, sir.
You
Was
said a
there-
particular number?
Yes, before you identified a group as a gang. In other words, for APD purposes, did a gang have to consist of a certain number of people, or a
Yes.
group rather?
Yes.
What was that number?
3 or more persons.
And did those 3 or more people have to have any particular characteristics per APD standards to be identified as a gang?
Yes.
And what were some of those characteristics that they had to have?
APD standards are relevant. That's my objection. Relevant
Your Honor.
APD standards.
We can ask, Your Honor, about what laws they followed, but we are trying to establish the basis
All right.
for this.
I'm over the objection, sir. You may answer the question, madam.
What
Yes,
char- what characteristics or what things did you look for in order to determine if a group that consisted of 3 or more people were a gang for APD purposes?
For APD purposes, we have a 6-point criteria that we used. I can try to remember it word for word, but it's been a little bit of time. If a person self-admits that they're a gang member, we would consider that as a factor. If we receive information from an unattested informant that the person is associated or a member of a gang, we use that. If a person identifies themselves by the style of clothing, monikers, hand signals, we use that. If a person frequents a particular neighborhood or area and associate with other identified gang members, we consider them a gang associate. Or if a person is arrested with other gang members and identifies themselves with the same monikers as that person, we take that into consideration. That might be slightly off, but I think that's the general
Okay.
definition.
And when we were talking about identifies with certain clothing, hand signals, are those characteristics that you all are looking for in groups or something different?
No, I mean, we definitely look for them when trying to identify gang members or associates. It's associated, in fact.
And did you consistently apply that protocol to make your decisions regarding classifying people as a gang member or a gang associate?
Yes.
How many cases involving gang activity would you say that you have been involved in since your time or during your time as a law enforcement officer?
We just talking about gang cases. We worked as a unit, but we did have our individual cases, so just involved with, I'm sure, well over 1,000.
And did the general public have access to the information that you amassed in those over 1,000 cases?
No.
Were you ever a member of the Georgia Gang Investigators Association?
I think I was.
And do you recall where it was that you obtained your 40 hours of gang training?
Maybe Savannah, Georgia. I know they had an annual conference down there.
Was that with?
GGI,
Okay, the Georgia Gang Investigators Association?
yes, them, and I believe APD may have put on a training, I believe Gwinnett County. I believe I've been to Las Vegas for a training,
Las Vegas?
I believe for a gang training.
And would that have been a day or a week or something in between?
For Las Vegas?
Yes.
No, I believe it was a couple of days.
And what kind of information did you learn at that training?
That training was more about the national traditional gangs, street gangs in California, Los Angeles, New York. It really didn't pertain to much in Georgia.
Now, when you're talking about Georgia, would you explain for the jury what differences you saw between gangs in Atlanta and gangs that you experienced growing up?
Overruled, sir.
You mind repeating that or repeating that?
Not at all. What was the difference between the gangs you saw in Georgia and the gangs you saw in Eagle?
Initially, I didn't know it was gangs in Georgia. So once the more traditional national gangs came to Georgia, I mean, it really wasn't a difference. You saw some of the same characteristics, but when I first got here, it was more just neighborhood cliques. It wasn't, you know, the gangs that you know and see on TV. That was not here. Well, I didn't see them here in Georgia.
Did you always use the Georgia law definition of a criminal street gang and criminal street gang activity when you made your cases while you worked in the gang?
Yes.
Bolster, Your Honor.
Overruled objection, sir.
When you obtained information about a person's alleged gang involvement, did you do anything beyond that bit of information? And I'll give you an example. Someone says they're in a gang. Do you look any further to get any more information, or do you just stop right there?
No, I mean, if someone admits that they're in a gang, I mean, I don't take what anybody says on face value.
What else do you look for?
Yeah, well, social media, look for previous police reports or FIFs, which are field contact interviews, where it's basically like a report, but it's not an arrest report. It's just saying the police had contact with this particular person, and it's just short details or narrative of what the contact was. We do get a lot of information from that, and the gang unit did a lot of FIFs just to memorialize whatever information was given during that interaction.
Is that information the general public has access to?
FIFs?
Yes.
I don't know if they can do an open records request for it, but I don't
Beyond
believe so.
doing an open records
Oh,
request.
okay, yeah, no.
Okay. And would that information lead you to any kind of better understanding of gang culture in Atlanta?
Getting the information from that particular person?
Yes.
Yes.
about if someone just told you that another person was involved in a gang? Did you stop right there, or did you do anything else to
Right.
corroborate what they were saying?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just unattested information at that time. I mean, we do document it, but if someone tells me somebody else is in a gang, I definitely want to verify it on my own. Try to get possibly social media, pull up, like I said, previous arrests and interactions with police, just to try to confirm the information that they're saying.
And do you even have a number for the number of people you've interacted with who've given you information you consider reliable about reliable gang intelligence?
From gang members or just
Non-gang
anyone?
members, just anybody.
I can't put a number on this. It's a lot.
And have you ever either formally or informally given any instruction on gang activity or criminal street gangs? Either.
I'll sustain this form, you can rephrase.
Have you ever trained any other officers or any other persons on how to recognize criminal street gangs?
Informally, because I was in the gang unit for so long, I've taught newer investigators. And I went back to the unit as a supervisor, so I've given training in that aspect as well about gangs to newer investigators.
And what kind of training would you provide them?
Just the general identifiers to look for. Had them really read up on the law. I mean, I can't tell you how to do your job, but I'll lead you to the water. And you know, it's gang investigations is really up to the individual if they're that invested to want to learn it and understand it. So I will definitely provide the information, but it's up to them if they want to learn it.
And did you seek to increase your knowledge and awareness of gangs and gang activity during your time at the gang unit?
Initially, yeah, I wanted to do as much training as I could, but once you get involved with investigations, it just kind of consumes all of your time, and training was, I was getting my on-the-job training. I wasn't going into the classroom learning.
I'm going to show you what has been provided to the defense and what has also been marked as State's Exhibit 98 Bravo Bravo. And I'll give them so that they can know what. Okay. Oh, okay. So, change that. I'll show you what I'll mark as 99 Bravo Bravo.
Okay.
You recognize State's Exhibit 99 Bravo Bravo.
Yep.
How do you recognize it?
It's my police resume.
Okay. Is that a fair and accurate copy of your resume detailing your
Yes.
experience with law enforcement?
Yes.
Your Honor, the state tenders State's Exhibit 99 Bravo Bravo as evidence.
I object to it as evidence, Your Honor. Do you know what this is? CV.
I see it.
For the purpose.
For the purposes of determining foundation, do you have any objections to that? Yeah.
But it was not tendered as that. It said evidence. Object. Tendered as.
I tell you, what, I'm going to admit it for the purposes of of foundation, and only that, okay?
Thank you,
All
Judge.
right.
Have you received any recognition during your time? Did you receive recognition for your work while you were in the gang unit from any sources?
Yes.
Would you please tell the jury about those?
I don't remember what maybe it was, thank you. 2013, I was the Atlanta Police Department's Officer of the Year. 2014, I was Atlanta Police Department's Investigator of the Year. 2016, I was Atlanta Police Department Crime Fighter of the Year. And just throughout my career, you get little Officers of the Month and Investigator of the Month, but those are the main three.
And when you got those awards, tell the difference between the Officer of the Month, Investigator of the Month, or Officer of the Year. What's the difference between the two?
Well, the one is for the month, and the yearly.
Okay.
No, the yearly ones are, department-wide, just your cumulative work for the entire year. They like to recognize who they want to recognize.
Have you ever testified in trials in Fulton County?
I have.
Have you ever testified in other counties at
Yes.
trial? Have you ever testified and been qualified as a gang expert in Fulton County?
Yes.
Have you been qualified as an expert in any other county besides Fulton County?
Yes.
What county?
DeKalb County
Do
and
you-
Clayton. I'm sorry.
Please go ahead.
I'm in Clayton County as well.
Do you know how many times that you have been qualified as an expert overall?
I didn't do a lot of trials, so I'll say roughly 5 to 10, somewhere in there.
And during your time with the Atlanta Police Department, were you deputized by Fulton County as well?
Yes.
And what did that mean?
Being deputized basically gives you police powers throughout the entire state of Georgia.
And was every gang unit investigator or officer also deputized by the Fulton County Sheriff?
No.
So how did you get that designation?
I don't know. Maybe our investigations kind of went outside of the county of Fulton, so we asked and got permission from the sheriff, and the sheriff deputized us.
How often did your investigations take you?
It varied. I mean, quite a few times.
Information you gathered when you did investigate matters outside of Fulton County at all contribute to your gang intelligence space, if you will?
Yes, they have.
Did you get information during those investigations that was not accessible to the general public?
Yes.
Just one moment. Your Honor, at this time, the state tenders Ms. Gaither as an expert in the area of criminal street gang investigation and identification. Just one moment. And criminal street gang.
What are the witness? Mr. Steele? Anyone else? Let's see. Mr. Weinstein?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Matthews?
No questions, Your Honor.
Ms. D. Williams? Mr. Sharp? Do you wish to voir dire the witness? Yes?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. I missed anybody?
Gardner.
Huh?
Gardner.
Mr. Gardner, apologize, sir. Do you wish to voir dire the witness, sir? What was the designation you'd like to have her, hold on one second. Okay, hearing no objection, the court will designate Ms. Gaither as an expert in the criminal street gangs and investigation and identification.
Criminal street gang investigations and identifications as well.
Said that?
Thank you.
Huh?
Thank you. Ms. Gaither, would you tell the jury how many criminal street gangs you became aware of during your time in the city of Atlanta while you were working with the gang? How many did you recognize? Do you even have a number?
I don't. There were quite a few what we call hybrid gangs, which was like neighborhood gangs. And we slowly began to see a lot of the neighborhood gangs either fade away or migrate to the traditional national gangs.
And what is the difference when you say hybrid gangs and neighborhood gangs between that and traditional or national gangs, as you call it?
The hybrid gangs were more loosely formed. It wasn't a lot of structure as far as ranking and bylaws that they followed. The traditional gangs had more of those characteristics. The hybrid gangs were just initially neighborhood guys just committing crimes, really. But the national traditional gangs had more structure to them.
What did you use or what distinguished a group of people standing around wearing the same colors, speaking the same lingo, even using similar hand signs from another group of people that you classify as a criminal street gang?
If both sides are standing around claiming a particular gang and committing criminal activity, then they're considered a gang.
And is it necessary that the people who are in the group you classify as a gang, that they be committing criminal street gang activity in order for you to classify the group itself as a gang?
Sir.
The law comes from the court.
I'm talking about her and the way that she carried out her investigation, John.
Under Olson versus State, which was decided 6 weeks ago, it's irrelevant with the APD policy.
I did not ask policy, Your Honor. The jury has engaged this witness.
I'm gonna overrule your objection, sir.
You mind repeating that, please?
And is it necessary that the people who are in the group you classify as a gang, that they be committing criminal street gang activity in order for you to classify the group itself as a gang?
No, I mean, it's not against the law to be in a gang. It's just when you're in a gang and you're committing crimes in furtherance of that gang that it becomes illegal. So, no, I guess no is the answer.
When did you first, what were the gangs that you first noticed when you did begin to recognize signs of gang activity in the city of Atlanta?
You want the hybrid gangs or the
The
hybrid?
first ones that you noticed in Atlanta?
Some of the more well-known ones was CRG, which is Campbellton Road Gangsters. They were operating in Zone 4. We did see ROC, which was from Cleveland Avenue, 30 Deep, which operated in Mechanicsville. Red Cartel, which was from Cleveland Avenue as well. Jack City, which was Jack City Boys, which was, I believe that was Thomasville neighborhood of Atlanta, excuse me. MDC, which is Most Dangerous Clique. They were out of Zone 1. Just off the top of my head, I think those are some of the larger ones.
What year did you start noticing a city size of those particular gangs?
Maybe 2008, 9, but I thought they were just neighborhood cliques. I didn't recognize them as, oh, you guys are a gang. So maybe 2008, 2009, once I got to the gang unit, and that was the shift of focus.
And what happened to cause your focus to shift on looking into these groups further? Besides your getting promoted or
Transferred. I guess just the understanding of the law and what the law considered a gang to be. It just kind of transformed into the work that I did and how I looked into, my investigations.
What type of crimes did you see being committed by these groups?
All types of crimes, narcotic sales. Like I said, the big thing then was the smash and grab robberies and burglaries. We had murders that we assisted with, the homicide unit with, aggravated assault, shootings. It was everything from A to Z, fights in schools, vandalisms, spray painting buildings and stuff.
And property crimes, did you ever see property crimes being committed by gang members?
Yes, that's what the smash. I'm sorry.
Asked and answered.
I never knew property.
I don't think she has. I'm going to overrule the objection, sir.
Yes, property crime would be like a smash and grab, burglary. We also saw a lot of auto thefts, which would be considered a property crime. Vandalisms of buildings or apartment complexes with spray paint, putting up gang graffiti, that would be considered a property crime.
Prior to your getting transferred to the gang unit, if there's, say, a drive-by shooting at a house and no one's hit or hurt, generally speaking, what happens to that type of case? Is it investigated further, generally speaking, before you got into the gang unit?
Relevance and also vague, which one are we talking about?
I'll sustain this to vague.
Thank you. I'll
You can rephrase.
Thank you. Was there anything that you noticed about property crimes that did not involve a person being hit that caused the Atlanta Police Department to treat those crimes differently after the gang unit began investigating gangs?
Yes. After a while, we noticed, I want to say it was maybe 2015, 2014, that damage to property crimes were not being investigated. So we would get some drive-by shootings at residences, and if no one was, injured during that shooting, a police report would be generated by the responding officer, and it would be classified as a damage to property, whether a window was shattered or a car window or damage to a home or a door. It would be classified as a damage to property. Well, those reports are generated, they go to central records, and that was it. It was no further investigation. So once we discovered that that was occurring, we basically went back some months and found quite a few damage to property reports that were, what we later found out were related and just hadn't been investigated.
Could you do me a favor? Could you speak
Sir,
directly in the
I'm sorry.
microphone? And use your outside voice so we can.
This one?
Yeah, that one, that's right, so we can hear you a little better. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so we essentially went back to investigate a lot of these damage to property reports, which we found were related to a ongoing bigger investigation, which changed how Atlanta police categorized damage to property reports.
Did those damaged property reports mainly involve shootings at residences where no one was actually hit?
Yes, the ones that we were focused on, where was shots fired calls or residences shot. If there wasn't a person necessarily like standing in the window or standing on the porch, and it was just, the property was damaged, that's what the crime would be. It'd be a property to damage to property, and it wasn't being investigated.
At any point during your time with the Atlanta Police Department, did you become familiar with a group calling itself Young Slime Life or YSL?
Yes.
Do you recall when it was that you became aware of the existence of such a group?
Roughly 2013.
And what put that group on your radar?
Well, the group was essentially already on the radar from its affiliation with Raised on Cleveland Rock Crew. And we began to see the members who we had previously identified as members of Rock Crew were now claiming YSL Young Slime Life. So, they had already been on the radar. It's just we hadn't heard of the name Young Slime Life before.
And were the members that you became aware of only from Rock Crew, or were there any other groups that you saw these members had prior affiliations with?
Yeah, we saw early on members from Red Cartel were now claiming to be Young Slime Life. We saw, I believe it was Block 125 or 125 Block, something like that. They were associating themselves with Young Slime Life. And later on, years later, we began to see members of 30 Deep were now claiming to be Young Slime Life. So, and then the traditional gang of Sex, Money, Murder began associating, or the association connected with Young Slime Life.
When you first became aware of the existence of a group called Young Slime Life or YSL, did you find any criminal activity being committed by members of that, or did you just hear generally of the group itself?
Yeah, Rock Crew early on in Young Slime Life, we investigated numerous crimes from robberies to auto thefts. Rock Crew were responsible for quite a few ATM thefts in the city, smash and grab ATM thefts. So those were the crimes early on that were associated with them.
And based on the training, experience, intelligence, and knowledge that you gained during your time at the Atlanta Police Department's gang unit, do you classify Young Slime Life or YSL as a criminal street gang?
Yes.
Did you identify persons who were either members of or associated with Young Slime Life during your time with the Atlanta Police Department?
Yes.
How did you identify those persons as being affiliated with or members of YSL?
Refer back to the 6 points that I was taught by APD on what we look for. Also, the main one was self admission or self-representation.
And were there particular victims that were being targeted in those robberies you mentioned, or no particular? In other words, who were they robbing?
I don't think it was a particular group of persons. whoever had something that they wanted. I mean, wasn't any boundaries on who.
Was it uncommon to see robberies of drug dealers by gang members?
No, it wasn't uncommon.
How often would you see that?
Happened all the time, but we didn't get a lot of reports from the drug dealer to say they stole my drugs and money. So, but sometimes we did.
And when you got those, did you investigate the robbery itself?
Absolutely.
And did you, even though the victim is a drug dealer, did you try and prosecute the person who robbed the victim?
Absolutely.
Okay. Did you identify specific people that, based on your training, experience, knowledge, and background, were members of YSL?
Did I investigate?
Did you identify?
Identify, I'm
during your
sorry.
time?
You may, sir.
Step up.
Gaither, during your time in the Atlanta Police Department gang, did you identify any of the people in the courtroom today as members of the criminal street gang, Young Slime Life or YSL?
Yes.
Would you tell the jury which ones?
Initially, Mr. Jackson, Jackson of Stillwell was claiming 30 deep, but he migrated to Young Slime Life.
I'm overruled objection.
You may go ahead.
He eventually migrated to Young Slime Life. When I first met Mr. Williams, incident occurred, I want to say it was maybe 2012, 11. That is when,
No, just.
okay,
Just
I apologize.
yes, no problem.
Mr. Williams and Mr. Jackson was Stillwell.
And by Mr. Williams, what first name?
Jeffrey.
And that was, is that the extent of the persons during your time at the Atlanta Police Department gang unit that you were able to identify as it relates to people in this courtroom as members of the criminal street gang? YSL?
Objection has been answered.
No.
I'm overruled objection, sir.
Go ahead.
And later on, Mr. Kendricks from Investigations.
And is that Diamante Kendrick?
Yes.
Did you personally have an opportunity to have personal interactions with either or all of these individuals during your time with the gang at the Atlanta Police Department?
Two of the three, Mr. Kendricks and Mr. Jackson.
And by Jackson, are we talking Shannon Stillwell?
Yes, Shannon Stillwell.
And would you just identify for the record where each of those persons is situated in the courtroom by an article of clothing or?
Yes. Mr. Kendricks,
I'm not stipulating Mr. Williams is sitting next to me.
So noted.
Your Honor, I'll stipulate Mr. Stillwell's seated right next to me.
So noted, sir.
And I will stipulate that Mr. Kendrick is sitting next to me.
Not getting up or anything like that? Okay, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. All right, yes, thank you, Mr. Weinstein.
So, yeah,
All right, so noted.
so the record will reflect that these are the individuals that the witnesses have identified.
It shall.
Thank you. Your Honor, this is the point at which, just one second. Let me also ask you, did you ever have any interactions with a Walter Murphy?
yes,
Did he go by the name DK? Is that the same Walter Murphy we're talking about?
yes,
Did you identify Walter Murphy as a member of the criminal street gang, Young Slime Life or YSL?
yes,
And what about Trontavious Stevens, who may have gone by Tick or Slug? Did you ever have any opportunity to interact with him?
yes,
And did you, based on your knowledge, training, experience, and background, determine whether or not he was a member of the criminal street
He
gang?
being who? Who, madam?
Trontavious Stevens, my apologies.
yes,
As a member of the criminal street gang, Young Slime?
yes,
What about Kelvin Treadwell or OG Denver?
yes,
He's also a member of the gang YSL.
yes,
And what about Antonio Sledge or Montuna? Is he also a member
yes,
of YSL?
yes, ma'am.
Quindarius Zachary, or Lil D, is he also a member, based on your training, knowledge, and experience, of the gang called YSL or Young Slime Life?
Yes,
Demekion Garland, is he also a member of the gang or criminal street gang called Young Slime Life or YSL?
yes, as well as another one,
When you, as well as,
another gang as well,
what is the other gang?
30 deep.
What about Demise McMullen or Nard? Did you have an opportunity to classify or determine whether he was in a gang?
Yes, YSL.
Kenneth Copeland or Wounded?
Yes, YSL as well as 30 deep.
Is YSL the only gang affiliation that you determined for Shannon Stilwell or Shannon Jackson?
Your Honor, ask and answer.
I sustain the objection.
Thank you. And Your Honor, at this point, the state is get into this witness as a fact witness.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, given that one of your member has to leave, it might be just for an appointment that we've already talked about. It might just be better if we just broke and recessed for the day. I let you just have lunch and just go ahead on and enjoy your afternoon. So what I'd like to do is just recess you all for the day. 1 second. All right. Detective Gaither, can you come back tomorrow? We're gonna start at 12:30. So if you could be here for 12:30, we'll start at 1 o'clock. Would that be sufficient, madam?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And please don't discuss your testimony with anybody except the attorneys in this case, and enjoy your afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow, okay?
Yes.
All right.
I'm good. Yeah, good afternoon.
Ladies and gentlemen, any ministerial inquiry of me? Okay, let's go through your admonitions. Since you will be breaking for the rest of the day, leave your notepads in the basket in the back. Don't discuss the case as has been presented thus far in onesies and twosies back there. As you're waiting on us, remember that it would be a violation for you to recap or otherwise handicap the testimony, that you can only consider it when the appropriate time is given by the court and the court tells you how to begin that particular process. So that's that part of the admonition. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, do not go to any third-party sites. Do not go into any blogs or any other places to augment your understanding. The only thing you can consider, as you know, is in the four walls of this courtroom. So please do not seek any outside knowledge. Remember, if anybody should try and approach you about this particular case, either through social media or through third-party sources or just people that are interested, remember, you would need to let myself and Sergeant Ingram know immediately if somebody were to try and talk with you about this case or talk about this case inside your presence and hearing. Don't go by and visit any of the scenes that may be depicted in this particular matter. And also, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience, that you've continued to give us thus far and will continue to give us as you consider this particular matter. So, ladies and gentlemen, unless you have any other ministerial inquiry of me, I'll go ahead and recess you all until tomorrow for 12:30. We'll start around 1 o'clock, and we will all. Jack's already. No, it needs to stay on the record. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Our jury has left us. All right, counsel, so tomorrow, 12:30, we'll pick up where we left off. And we'll just continue and see how far we get. And we can then talk about next week, the week of the 22nd, okay? All right, anything I need to take up now?
Your Honor, it's at 12 o'clock, report time to start at 12:30.
For tomorrow?
Okay.
Remember, Ms. Love, I got other things I got to do. I got Veterans Court tomorrow, okay? I told you that. So, but I will be down here and available. I'll come down for 12:30 in case we need to take up anything. So I would ask that you all would be here for 12:30. So if you do need to take up anything, we'll have that 30 minutes to do so, okay? All right, is there anything else I need to take up at this point in time with you all? Sir, Mr. Steele.
There will be, and I assume it's just, sorry, I assume it's the targeted objections, but Walter Murphy's original interview is not redacted. The state gave us a transcript that is not usable. And the only thing redacted is the exculpatory statement when Mr. Walter Murphy, which you excluded already, said that, you know, I can get killed for this, but it doesn't involve Jeffrey Williams.
But remember I told you yesterday that you were welcome, but you have a differing opinion than Mr. Short does, and you may get into that particular issue.
I do, and I appreciate that.
And I haven't forgot, and I said that yesterday, so.
And I appreciate that. This is a different issue. The state only redacted Walter Murphy saying, yeah, I was scared, I could be scared, I could be killed. That has nothing to do with Jeffrey Williams. The only thing that they redacted is this has nothing to do with Jeffrey Williams. So the whole thing should be out because under the case law you have, which I have to refresh my memory, just remember it was an M case, but since it doesn't apply to any guilty consciousness, and Mr. Murphy did cooperate with the state again a couple months later in August and in February, and then testified that July 17th should not be discussed at all. In addition to that, I was told that the prosecutor questioning Detective Gaither is going to ask questions like, did you ask Mr. Murphy whether he had a gun or whether Mr. Murphy was around this person? Those are hearsay. It doesn't matter what the detective asked. It's the answer of Mr. Murphy that would be inconsistent if it is inconsistent. So I just don't want to waste the time. That's what I was trying to do this morning. It's just a lot of time consumption. So I just want to alert you that I'm objecting again to everything being played the way I think the state is trying to play it, but that July 15, 2015 recorded interview should not, in my opinion, it has no relevance except he was threatened, he felt threatened rather, and then he said it was not due to Jeffrey. So why is that coming in when he cooperated the next two times, which are what the case law says? That's my objection.
All right, State, what do you have to say?
Response to that. We addressed this yesterday, Your Honor, and it was relating to specifically the search. Mr. Steele does not quite have it right as the court ruled. It was the search of Jeffrey Williams' home that the court excluded. That was the only thing that the court told us that we should not and could not get into. The court has never, ever ruled, as Mr. Steele may have mistakenly thought, and said that the court or the state could not get into the points with which Ms. Hilton confronted Mr. Murphy as it related to the fears he expressed regarding telling police officers what happened. As a matter of fact, on the stand, Mr. Murphy testified that he didn't remember what he said in the July 15th interview in 2015, but he knows the only thing he was afraid of was going to jail because he had been false flagging as a blood. He made that assertion numerous times on the record, and that has never been the subject of a point of contention that the court has addressed that we would not be allowed to get into, because the court, as a matter of fact, looked at it, analyzing it under a party's bias, a witness's bias, or motive, or leaning towards a particular party. And I think that statute is 24-6-6-22, I believe we brought it to the court.
Yes.
I'll look it up and make certain. But we definitely confronted Mr. Murphy with those statements. He says, I could get killed just by being here. I could get killed for looking at this video. You all pulled up. He flatly denied that. He said, when you all pulled up and that officer pulled up his mask, that alone could get me killed. Throughout his interview in July of 2015, he talked about the fact that he could get killed because he was cooperating with the police. We never said that he was talking or pointed to Jeffrey Williams, so that assertion is actually kind of confusing an issue that is not a real issue. We're not trying to say that Jeffrey Williams threatened Walter Murphy. We're saying that Walter Murphy had a reason for acting the way that he did, and that the jury is entitled to see his asserted reasons that he then denied on the stand in the context of the reasons being stated.
All right.
And it's not 24/6, it's 22. So, 622, 17. .622 and one other statute, just one moment.
622, what, 24 dash,
24-6-622.
okay.
And we argued this very point 2 weeks ago when we talked about other redactions, and the court ruled that we were allowed to get into this because it was a matter that he,
Yeah, you just can't talk about just general fear. It has to be related to one of those.
and he talks about it in
Okay.
the.
All right. I did rule upon that already. All right, anything else, sir?
I filed a motion in limine, we had good conversations, had all the cases, Court had read them beforehand, I gave you all the 8 cases, I believe. And then the state asked one question, if it was Ms. Hilton, the Honorable Ms. Hilton, said that he didn't remember saying that, asked another question about fear, I asked approach, you said move on, sustain the objection. I don't know how it's now going to be played, and I'm objecting to it. The court has ruled, and it is character evidence, and they took out, the matter is bad enough putting it in, but the state has redacted. I'm objecting. The only part, after he said I could get killed for this, he said, but this has nothing to do with Jeffrey. I don't know how. Somehow that's the only part that is redacted. In addition, the state did not redact and take out all of the information about the search. And I've said it now 4 times. And I will. I'm putting everyone on notice. And I'm not saying you're going to grant it, because I heard what you said earlier. You're not going to grant a mistrial. But this is out of control. This is an out of control part by the state. They constantly are ignoring the court's rulings. So I'm objecting. I put it on the record now, and then whatever happens tomorrow happens. I understand you could deny it. And then
Well, I hope it won't come up. It won't come up because you do need to trim out that, and I trim out those particular things about the search of Mr. Williams' home. Well then, you know, here's the thing. Why don't you all get together and make sure that it's done and you see it?
So, Mr. Steele and I have had a number of conversations about taking out the part of the search.
Okay, let's break it down.
So the search of the house.
Has the issue involving Mr. Williams' home been taken out?
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes, but the version that we're going to use is very similar to what we saw yesterday. So what the state intends to do, which is the transcript we sent over this morning, is the highlighted area, which is from 2:49 p.m. and 51 seconds to 2:49 p.m. and 51 seconds to 2:50 p.m. and 11 seconds is the area in which Ms. Gaither talks to Walter about the search. That is out. We've highlighted that area. We've redacted it. We will redact it by muting that portion of the interview. The only other part that Mr. Steele is talking about is what we discussed yesterday, which is the mentioning that Duke, which is a co-conspirator, was at the house at the time of the search. You ruled that could come in, that Duke was at the house, not that that can't come in. So the only thing about the search that is there in the July 2015 interview, because I want to be real clear, is that Duke was present. Now, if we need to take out the word search, we can take out the word search, but that Duke was present at Mr. Williams' home on July 15th when DK was arrested is very relevant, because that's another co-conspirator who was at the house at the time in which another co-conspirator, Walter Murphy, was arrested.
Well, take out the word search.
So we can take out the word
Take out the
search.
search, Walter Murphy being at the house, Duke being at the house, yes, it would be relevant. So, all right. What else is, now, are you gonna include back in what Mr. Steele said about the exculpatory portion of him, Walter Murphy saying, but this has nothing to do with Jeffrey?
That's not I don't know what Mr. Steele's referencing, so I would need to know a
Is it in the
timestamp.
tape?
I need to know which tape he's referencing, but it's because the only thing that the state is redacting from the July 2015 interview is 2:49 p.m. and 51 seconds to 2 p.m. and 2:50 p.m. and 11 seconds.
So is
So
that-
outside of that, the state does not intend to
So
redact
is that
anything
in-
else.
So is that in?
Yes.
So the only thing
based
that's
on
being
this.
redacted is the 2:49 to 2:50 and 11 seconds?
Yes, and then we're going to find this one word search by Duke's name.
We are definitely taking that one word out. Yeah.
So I need to find where that is in this transcript. But outside of that, everything else is in.
Can you caucus or gather with Mr. Steele and just make sure that that is done, please?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Steele, you're gonna give it.
Court also ordered, pursuant to my motion, the state actually conceded that they would not be getting in that same day, that there was a search of a studio, a record studio. Has nothing to do with Mr. Williams. Has nothing to do.
I don't recall that.
Well-
Was that part of your,
Motion, yes, and you ruling, and I would have to ask Madam Court.
well, no, here's the thing. I don't think your motion limiting Williams number 50 has that particularity in it.
It was before this. We did it weeks ago. I raised this issue weeks ago. And
You're
I
right.
asked about the
Tell me what,
I don't.
can you tell me what motion was in, sir? I mean, I'm not saying you didn't.
I know, I'm not challenging.
No. I'm just saying, can you tell me what?
Can I sit down for a second?
Yes, absolutely.
I interview, and we don't see the words, now granted, it's not the best transcript, but we do not see the word studio in here. So I don't believe there was anything about the search of the studio in either the July or the August interview. I don't believe we've had any argument, but the record should reflect that we did argue about the studio, but as it relates to the Walter Murphy interviews, unless Mr. Steele can direct me exactly to which interview, I definitely do not see anything about the studio, just doing a rough search of the transcript for the July 2015 interview.
So, Ms. Hilton, if what you're saying is correct, there's nothing in the July 15th interview in respect to the search of the studio?
When I just did a quick search of the word studio in that transcript, that word does not come up in that transcript. I'm now looking at the August transcript and studio comes up in relation to Little Wayne bus shooting, but Mr. Atkins is sending me a note.
Right.
Is that the August interview though? So right now, yes. So the only studio that we have right now is the August interview in which Mr. Murphy discusses with Gaither and Dennis that after the Little Wayne bus shooting, they go to Blue Ivory and then they go to the studio afterwards. So there's nothing about the search of the studio. Not in these interviews. There might be a different interview that Mr. Steele is referencing, but not this particular interview. Again, I could be corrected, but and Mr. Steele can direct me to where what he is referencing.
Mr. Steele, do you have it or you have it located?
I am looking.
Yeah, I know. Mr. Steele, you want to check your records? Because I'm not to say that I have the best memory, but I don't recall the studio.
Say it, but I'll find it.
If you find it, send us a group email about that.
Absolutely.
That'd be fine. Okay. All right, anybody else? Okay, we're in recess until tomorrow. If you could be here for 12:30, I'll take up anything prior to our jury's arrival at 1 o'clock, all right? All right, we're in recess.
courtroom, as that's
No.
the way, in my experience, it's always
No.
been done in federal court.
It can be done. There's 11th Circuit cases that I was shown yesterday that authorize for that. So,
I understand be authorized to do that. I was just suggesting that the better practice may be to do it before the jury is present.
Mr. Steele asked me that yesterday.
Okay, thank
So,
you, Your Honor.
yeah, so I'm going to see if they qualify the witness using the Daubert standards in 702, and we'll let you all voir dire the witness accordingly, and then I will make a decision as to whether or not that particular individual is able to testify in that manner.
Thank you.
Okay?
Your
All
Honor, can I
right.
just get a continuing objection?
Yes.
to The case, the 11th Circuit case, I think it's Ware. I think-
You're right, it is Ware.
Thank you.
Okay, all right.
ARE, I don't believe it says that it's done in front of the jury. It said it wasn't done at all, and you have the discretion to find someone. But I don't,
No, it was done, there was no pre-admission. It was done in front of the jury because of the type of case it was. I mean, I think it was firearms or ballistics or whatever else, so.
I think the court just made that fine. Anyway, I'm objecting to it being done in front of the jury. I'm objecting not to have the doubt heard outside the presence of the jury. Can I just have a continuing objection? Because I don't want to do this in front of the jury.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
all right. Anything else? All right, summon our witness, please.
Jury first.
Yeah, I'll bring in the jury, yes, thank you. Do you want me to give the limiting instruction?
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
Jury President Conklin.
All right, thank you, Sergeant Ingram. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, good morning. Good morning. All right, without further delay, we're going to continue with the pre-state's case. Call your next witness.
The state calls Investigator Gaither to the stand.
All right, summon Investigator Gaither, please. All right, madam, good morning. If you would come on up, please. Witness stand, once you get there, if you turn and face Sergeant Ingram, be sworn as a witness before you sit down.
Raise your right hand. Swear affirm testimony you give the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Spell the first and last name for the court.
Lakia Gaither, Lakeeagaitherer.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, before we hear testimony from Detective Gaither, I'm going to read you an admonition, a limiting instruction, okay? So just bear with me and then we'll go ahead and hear from our witness. You're about to hear testimony from Detective Gaither, who will testify both to facts and two types of opinions and the reasons for those opinions. I will describe all three types of testimony. The first is fact testimony. Fact testimony is based upon what the witness personally saw, heard, or did. The second is opinion testimony based on the specialized knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education of the witness. The third is called lay opinion testimony. As to the testimony about the facts, it's your job to decide which testimony to believe and which testimony not to believe. You may believe everything a witness says, or part of it, or none of it, or all of it. As to the opinion, testimony based on the witness's specialized knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education, you should, or none of it. You should give it as much weight as you think it deserves, considering the witness's knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education, the reasons for the opinion, and all other evidence in the case. As to lay opinion testimony, this testimony is based on inferences drawn from the witness's direct perceptions and must be rationally based on those perceptions and not on speculation or what someone else has said. You should judge this testimony like any other testimony. You may accept all of it, part of it, or none of it. You should give it as much weight as you think it deserves. When considering lay opinion testimony, however, you should not give it any extra credence based on the specialized knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education as witness. You should also consider whether the witness testified to personal observations or involvement of the fact. It's a fact witness testifying about a lay opinion based on the witness's perceptions or testifying to an opinion based on specialized knowledge, skilled, experience, training, or education. When a witness provides opinion testimony based on knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education, that person may rely upon facts that are not based on his or her personal observations or involvement, but that opinion cannot serve as proof of the underlying facts. The fact that a witness is allowed to express opinions based on a person's specialized knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education should not cause you to give that witness's undue influence for any aspect of that person's testimony or otherwise influence your assessment of the credibility of that witness. All right, Madam, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. And just so that we are clear, Your Honor, I will be attempting to qualify.
Objection, speaking.
I'm going to overrule it just for a second, just to see where she's headed. Okay, Mr. Steele? All right.
The order of the questioning will be first as an expert and then as.
So you're gonna qualify?
I'm going to.
Okay, all right,
Yes.
all right. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. And is it still Detective Gaither?
No. Good morning. No, good morning.
Thank you. Now, are you retired
Yes.
from police work?
Yes.
Would you tell the jury what kind of work you currently do?
Turn the microphone on, please.
Which one?
The one you're standing.
I'm afraid it's already on.
Yeah, if you could speak into it, Ms. Lowe. Thank you.
I don't think it's working, but I will speak up.
I heard it. If you stand next to it, it'll pick up. Detective Gaither, if you could just also speak in the microphone.
Yes,
we'll
sir.
be able to hear you. Okay, thank you.
Would you tell the jury what kind of, are you still in law enforcement?
No, ma'am.
And how long has it been since you left law enforcement?
4 years.
Did you retire from law enforcement?
Yes.
How long did you work in law enforcement?
Almost 19 years.
Would you please tell the jury where you're originally from?
Chicago, Illinois.
What part of Chicago, if any particular part?
Objection, relevance.
Your Honor,
Overruled.
go ahead.
South side of Chicago, Inglewood community.
And it's Inglewood, E-N-G-L-E-W-O-O-D?
E, yes.
And did you grow up in Inglewood, in the Inglewood community of Chicago?
Yes.
So did you go to grade school and high school there?
Yes.
What high school did you attend?
Bowen. B-O-W-E-N. Bowen.
And I'm standing over here, so
Yes.
the last year in there. While you
Just go ahead. Go ahead.
while you were growing up in Inglewood, were there any gangs in your neighborhood, as you understood them to be?
Relevance.
Overruled, sir.
Yes.
And did you know about them while you were growing up?
Yes.
How did you know about them?
Just friends, going to school with gang members, the community. In Chicago, gangs, it's kind of like culture. So you're very aware of gangs at a young age.
Now, when you say it's kind of like culture, would you explain to the jury exactly what you mean?
Gangs in Chicago were very prevalent from my parents, my grandparents, all the way to me. So just gang lifestyles, what to stay away from, what to look for. It was very well known at a young age. So.
And who was it that gave you the information you had at that time about, and I'm not asking what they said.
I'll rule the objection, Mr. Foreman. Go ahead.
Who was it that gave you the information that you used to just conduct yourself on a day-to-day basis as it relates to gangs?
Well, I'm the youngest in my family, so I have older brother, uncles. We all live together. My mother, so just family, really. What to look for, who to stay away from.
And while you were growing up, what gangs did you know about that were there in Inglewood?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Overruled, sir.
In my neighborhood, it was gangster disciples and black disciples. Where I went to school, it was, I believe it was Black Pea Stones in that area, so it's two different gang sets.
And I heard you say friends and family, I think.
Yes.
Did you know anyone who was actually associated with or a member of any particular street gang?
Yes.
What was your relationship to the people that you knew who were in street gangs?
I have family members, friends, high school friends.
And did you interact often on a daily basis with these people who were also gang members?
You can't choose your family, but, you know, of course, family, but friends, you knew to be cordial with them at school. But, you know, outside of that, my family did a pretty good job of keeping,
I'm gonna overrule the objection, Mr. Steele.
my family did a pretty good job of keeping myself and my siblings away from that.
Now, were you afraid to interact with them when you were growing up with your friends and family who were involved with gangs?
Objection, relevance.
I sustain the objection.
And did you have to comport yourself in any particular way as it related to gangs in your neighborhood growing up?
I would say so. I mean, we were taught at a very young age about certain colors you don't wear. Back then in the 80s and the 90s, the thing was,
I'm gonna overrule the objection, sir.
the manner in which you wear your hat, whether it was to the either side or backwards, clothing attire, based on particular neighborhood that you lived in or frequent, that was a pretty well-known fact not to do or just be aware of.
Now, did you personally ever get involved with any gangs in the neighborhood?
No.
And did you actively avoid run-ins with gang members in the neighborhood that were not your family?
Objection, relevance.
I sustain the objection.
How large was the neighborhood that you grew up in?
We had to compare it. I mean, Inglewood community, several miles, maybe 9 square miles, if that.
Did I hear you say you have to compare it?
Yeah, if I were to try to compare it, I mean, to something here in Atlanta,
Cleveland Avenue area of Atlanta, are you familiar with that area?
yes.
How do you know about the Cleveland Avenue area of Atlanta?
Just from working investigations and frequenting the area doing work.
Did I hear you say frequenting the area doing work?
During work.
Okay. And using the Cleveland Avenue area of Atlanta,
Mm-hmm.
can we use that? How would you describe Inglewood when compared to that area?
In comparison as far as size or?
As far as size, culture?
I sustain the question.
Start with size.
Inglewood may be a little larger than Cleveland Avenue. I would say about, if you're familiar with Zone 3. Zone 3 is one of our larger zones. Inglewood will probably be the same size as Zone 3.
Thank you. And how about in terms of socioeconomic status? How would you describe the Inglewood area that you grew up in as compared to the Cleveland Avenue area?
Objection, relevance.
Overruled.
Uh,
Go ahead.
Go ahead and answer it. I'll rule that objection as well.
It's roughly the same. I mean, you do have your crime. You do have financial issues between families, but there are good, hardworking people in the neighborhood as well. So Roughly the same.
Now, when did you,
After high school,
and what year was that? My age.
you showing my age.
Sorry.
98.
All right. And what was it that led you to leave Chicago?
I thought I wanted to go to college, so I went.
So where did you go to school?
In West Virginia,
What school in West Virginia?
West Virginia State College.
Now, you said you thought you wanted to go there. Did you know growing up that you wanted to go to college?
No,
Overruled.
no.
At West Virginia State College, did you declare a major?
Objection, relevance.
What was your
Overruled.
major?
Criminal justice.
Did that major have anything to do with the neighborhood that you grew up in or your contact?
Relevance.
Why did you choose criminal justice?
I'll sustain the question to form.
Your Honor, still relevance.
I'm gonna overrule the objection, Mr. Sharp.
Why did you choose criminal justice?
I have no clue. I mean, I never wanted to be law enforcement. I grew up watching the TV shows, Law and Order, Cops. I thought it was interesting, but I didn't have a desire to be a police officer.
Now, did you graduate?
I did not.
All right. Why did you leave before graduating?
Financial reasons, in school and at home.
Where did you go when you left West Virginia State?
Atlanta,
And what year was that?
2000, late 2000.
How old? Never mind, I'm not going to do
I'm
that.
done.
When you got to Atlanta, what did you do in terms of employment?
I think I worked a retail job for a short period of time.
Did you do something different after that?
APD, Atlanta PD.
All right. What made you apply with the Atlanta Police Department? What made you choose that particular agency?
Honestly, I was just giving a friend of mine a ride down to Atlanta Police Headquarters to apply. And he suggested that I come in and apply as well. So there's no intention of doing it.
All right. Now, once you applied, did you have any idea what role you wanted to play in the police department?
No.
And when you first came to Atlanta, culturally, was it the same, different than, or in some ways both, to where you grew up in Inglewood?
Foundation, Your Honor. Relevance.
I'll sustain the objection.
Is it as to foundation, or do I need to?
I'll sustain it to relevance. You can
Okay.
lay more foundation.
Thank you. When you first came to Atlanta, did you personally, at that time, know about any gangs in the city of Atlanta?
No.
And did you personally, at that time, recognize any signs of criminal street gang activity in the city of Atlanta?
No.
What was your first role at the Atlanta Police Department?
I was a patrol officer in Zone 4, Southwest Atlanta.
What parts of Atlanta made up Zone 4 at that time?
West End area, Cascade, the northern part of Martin Luther King, the western part of Martin Luther King, Fairburn Road, parts of Camp Creek, Campbellton Road.
Now, as it relates to Zone 3, where was Zone 4 situated in Atlanta? Were they next to one another, separated by another zone, or something different?
Parts of Zone 3 do border Zone 4. If you're down on the eastern end of Zone 4, like around Lee Street, West End Mall area, that borders the western part of Zone 3, Mechanicsville, Pittsburgh neighborhood, Deal Avenue. And outside of that, everything else is kind of on the opposite side. Zone 6 is the other side of Zone 3.
Okay. And so, was it your testimony that the Mechanicsville, Pittsburgh, and Deal Avenue area of zone?
Repeating testimony.
I'm trying to get clarity.
I'll
Clarity for the question.
overrule the objection, sir.
Were those areas, the Mechanicsville area, Pittsburgh area, and Dale Avenue area in zone 3?
Yes.
And did they abut zone 4?
Lee Street was basically the border between Zone 3 and Zone 4. So Lee and Abernathy was kind of the barrier between the two zones,
Okay.
if you had to break them up.
Did you interact with people from zone 3 as well as zone 4, or did you only interact with people who lived in zone 4 at the time that you first started as a patrol officer in zone 4?
You mean citizens or police?
Citizens? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's no barriers for citizens in Atlanta. They come to Zone 3. Our Zone 4 citizens go to Zone 4. It's not like police work where you're kind of restricted to a certain area. Citizens, they move back and forth, come in contact with all types of people.
Would you tell the jury what your responsibilities were as a patrol officer in zone 4?
I was assigned to evening watch, which is 2:30 to 10:30, I believe. Responsibilities included answering 911 calls, traffic accidents, directed patrols, that type of thing.
Describe for the jury a typical day at evening watch for you in zone 4 as a patrol officer.
So just a typical day.
Your Honor, I'm establishing.
I'll just sustain this form, you can rephrase.
Was there any one particular duty that you performed more often than patrol officer in zone 4 on evening watch?
Well, evening watch was the busiest time of day for police officers. So by the time I got to work, we would have a bunch of calls, independence calls, holding for officers to respond to. So the first several hours of my day would be trying to knock down our pending of all the calls that came in previous before I came to work. So
Say that last part again, I didn't hear you. The first part of your day was what?
was trying to help with the pending calls that were calls for service that were just sitting in the queue waiting on officers to respond to. So the first half of my day was that, just trying to get the pending down. We would come in, it would be 30 calls in the pending back then. So and the second part would trying to play catch up until you learn how to work your day.
All right. Now, as a patrol officer, did you actually investigate cases that occurred in zone 4, or did you only respond to the cases?
No, my responsibility was a first responder, which is when someone calls 911, the first officer that responds to your house or whatever scene that the call was. I would take the initial report, and if it needed to be forwarded to a detective or an investigative unit, it would then be forwarded to that unit.
And what was the difference in what you did as a patrol officer and what the investigator would do with that same fact circumstance that you handed over?
Really, I was just the initial responding officer to gather whatever preliminary facts about whatever case or incident it was, and document that, and that would then be forwarded to the investigator to further look into it, investigate the crime.
As a first responder on evening watch in zone 4, how often did you have personal contact with the citizens of zone 4?
All day, every day, all the time.
And was that contact only when you were arresting someone?
No,
Was it only when you were investigating a crime though?
no.
What opportunities did you have to interact with the citizens of zone 4 outside of arresting somebody or investigating a crime?
I kind of learned how to work my day. I wasn't a fan of answering 911 calls, accidents. So I just kind of became proactive where I would get out in our high crime areas,